What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and today I am joined by Jack to, your musings. You're bringing your musings to, and I'm going to say the pun, because it's going to be quite late in January, but we are doing January a little bit. We're at least going to get one in for January. We're going to be doing a bit of a Jackie Chan retrospective, and we're going to be covering what's considered to be the original Police Story saga before it becomes new Police Story and things in the 20th and 21st century. So we are starting today. We're going to do it different now, though, because before I used to try and cram a couple of films in an episode, but we don't want to let them breathe. We want to talk about these things. So we're going to do one film an episode, and these are going to be interspersed amongst other things. So this is the Jackie Chan Police Story retrospective, starting with Police Story. But first and foremost, Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's
Pleasure
always
to everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have. I'm always have a good time with you, so I'm pleased to be back. And when you first posted about, anybody up for doing any of these, it just perfectly coincided with the fact that I was on my own little Jackie Chan January investigation and exploration anyway. So stars aligned here, I think.
Yeah, no, it did. It's meant to be. If you've been doing your own January, what sort of areas of Jackie Chan's filmography have you been covering then to date?
Yeah, so it was a couple of years ago now, more than that probably. There was a feature in an old Empire magazine, and it was Edgar Wright and it was Gareth Evans talking about their favorite Jackie Chan movies. And I took a mental note of like, oh, okay, they're the two guys I would hold in high regard for who has made really well choreographed, directed modern action scenes. So I made a note of the films they mentioned, and a few of them I'd already seen, but quite a lot of them I hadn't actually. It was kind of a mid-80s era of Jackie Chan, which I hadn't gone back and gone into lots of detail on. So I've just gone back, and the way my brain works, I have to start at the start and work my way through. So I've watched Project A, Wheels on Meals, Police Story, Armor of God, and Project A Part 2 so far.
Yeah. Now, some good films in there.
There are, and I don't know how much you want me to say as we go about the other ones I've watched, but
we can touch on them because especially the Project A and Armor of God they're interesting ones. Especially when we get to the stunts.
Yes,
because that's the big attractor of these things. And Project A, it is Project A Part 1, isn't it? When he comes off the top of the building and goes through all the.
He's hanging off the clock in like the.
But
Buster
Keaton kind of
way.
Yeah,
I think it's somebody. Is it Harold Lloyd? I think is one of the famous clock hang. But yeah, exactly like the Buster Keaton type stuff. Yeah, that's Project A. You're right. Yeah.
And he literally on the film, he lands on his head, and you sort of watch it. And it is brutal. But it's interesting. There is a connection because obviously, when he was making those, he was making films all over the place, wasn't he? And obviously started directing. He directs Police Story. And it's like it's never one to be sort of, we're never one to sort of stop Jackie Chan. And having made those films, there's some incredible work in all those films. I think in Armor of God, there's the motorbike. Was it in 2? I can't remember. There's a really cool chase in them and stuff like that. Where he's like, right, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
This one's like so heavy on glass and ends with one of the craziest sort of shopping center stunt like spectaculars. Every time I watch this film, I'm just like, it's wince inducing like throughout. And so I'm always so impressed with him and his stunt team. But yeah, we'll jump in. I mean, I'll try to give a bit of a brief go through. The plot's almost irrelevant to an extent.
I agree. I think it is, and that's why I know we're doing Police Story here, but I know it's a celebrated movie of his, and I think as you've touched upon, stunts and fight choreography, I can understand why. Story wise,
Mm.
not so much. I think there's other films from this era where the stories are much stronger.
Well, this is where I think it's one of the things I'll be interested to sort of talk about is this Hong Kong cinema versus Western
Mm,
actioners and that sort of thing, and where they put their emphasis. I mean, the story of this is, and again, it depends on which dub or which subtitle version of you, but he's basically called Jackie.
yeah.
Not one to push the boat out on names, but a police officer named Jackie. Um, during a stakeout for a major drug dealer, um, basically sort of escalates the situation, which results in a massive, well, a massive big bust, well, a massive chase through a thing.
Mm.
Basically, this film starts with the end of Bad Boys 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then goes from there, and then it includes the bus chase, which is amazing. Um, but at the end of all this, because it's been such a fiasco, Jackie gets put in charge of looking after a key witness that they have to sort of fool into believing that the police are on her side, so that she will testify against the drug lord. Through shenanigans,
Mm.
she then escapes, but also Jackie gets put in the spotlight, and so the drug lord comes after him through a whole number of things, culminating in a series of fights, a corrupt police officer coming after him, and eventually a big showdown in a shopping center. That's about all you need to know, really.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
there's
fair.
and he has a girlfriend that sort of, I don't know what their relationship is, but basically she's there to throw cake in his face and stunts. And again,
Yeah.
it's sort of
It's not the sort of relationship you'd get in a film nowadays. Let's be honest.
yeah,
It's pretty abusive at times.
yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that I watching it this time, and I don't really know enough about Jackie Chan's politics or anything like that. So
Hmm.
I don't, this is the 80s, and so this is a different film sort of thing. But there are jokes in this film that I was like,
Ah,
I'm not so sure this works anymore. Like the way that he treats his girlfriend, but also I think the one you're nodding at is obviously there's a whole scene of him mixing up telephones and
hmm.
answering phones, and there's a woman reporting a rape.
Yeah.
And he says, when were you raped? She says, a year ago. And he says, and you're reporting it now? Like
Yeah.
he literally sort of has a go at her. It's tried to done for comedy, but like you're watching it now, I was like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that has not aged well.
No, that has not. And I'm pretty sure, obviously times have changed and we can all be sensitive of that. And obviously when Tony and I do seasons greetings, we always talk about how times have changed and it's fair to
Yeah.
reflect that. I'm not sure that joke would have been funny in 1984 either, if
No,
I'm
no.
honest.
That's so true. It is. It's very sort of and it comes a little bit out of left field because a lot of it this film's I don't know if it's like a 12 or a 15. It's sort of like, but apart from the stunts and the action, it's this almost feels like a kid's film
Hmm. Hmm.
in many ways. I mean, the stunts are incredible, we'll get to all those, but like there's very little swearing. There's no, there's no sort of there's some innuendo, but nothing sexy. Like it's not really offensive. And then all of a sudden this joke comes out of nowhere and you are just like, oh, well, that's an odd choice. A choice was made there, let's say.
Yeah, no, I agree. The tone is tricky to place, isn't it? I watched Project A with my eldest. He's 11, and he absolutely loved it. He's seen some of the modern Jackie Chan's. He really likes the one when what is like I think it's the Spy Next Door,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then there's
yeah.
My Spy, which is the Dave Bautista kind of same version of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he really likes the Spy Next Door. And I said to him, I'm watching some Jackie Chan's in January. Do you want to try one out? So we watched Project A together, and yeah, obviously it's really dated, but he just the way that action is played out and the way that he choreographs, it's like a
Mm.
dance, isn't it? It's
Mm.
wonderful. And he really enjoyed it. She says, oh, can we watch some more, Dad? Like when you're watching some more, can we do that together? So I've got a couple earmarked to watch with him. I don't think I'd watch Police Story with him yet because there are just some parts in it where I feel like I'm going to have to explain this. And
Yeah.
I'm not really ready to explain why a joke about rape isn't funny.
Yeah.
Um, which is weird I agree with you. The rest of the movie is playful and silly, but even the relationship stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like the scene when they're in the apartment together and he's getting caked in the face, which is proper
Mm.
pratfall slapstick stuff. But then you've got I can't remember the name of the May is his girlfriend, isn't
Girlfriend.
it?
Yeah.
And then you've got the name of the witness who he's looking after, and the way she like plays. May and Jackie off against one another, and they're talking about their relationship, and the way he's talking in the bathroom when he's showering about May is all a bit too grown up at the moment as well. So tonally, there's some issues here, I think.
Yeah, Selena is the
Selena,
witness.
thank you.
Um, yeah, no, I agree. Like some of the sort of like relationship politics, but also just like you said, just the way he treats her. Like,
Mm.
you know, when she tries to leave on her moped later on, and he literally just grabs her off the back of it and lifts the back wheel up, and you're just sort of
Yeah,
like, dude, like some of this is, no, no means no. Like leave it alone, let her
absolutely.
leave.
Yeah.
you know. So I agree. Some of that sort of doesn't play.
Hmm.
And also like it's an odd choice for in the film in itself. Like it doesn't need to be there. The character of May doesn't need to be there. I think if I remember rightly, she plays a bigger part in two, so she sort of feels a bit more sort of like a part of the plot.
Hmm.
Um, but in this, like, yeah, it's sort of like, oh, he needs a love interest because it's almost like we've thought of these jokes. Jackie Chan needs to have cake put in his face, so we have to
Yeah.
introduce this idea. So we're going to have like give him a girlfriend and have all the confusion of, he's now come home with Selena in her underwear because they've been chased and all this other stuff. So it feels very slapstick, as you say, but
Mm.
again, it doesn't always play well.
And I know the way they worked then was different, wasn't it? I know, like, actually,
Hmm,
it's kind of the McEwan Cruise model for the Mission Impossibles that they do now, which is they come up with the stunts, don't they? They come up with the action scenes, and they kind of go, right, I know I want to do all this glass work. I want to do a slide down a pole in the mall. All right, I know I want to do the drive down through the slums and hanging off a bus. Now, what's the movie? And I'm
yeah,
pretty sure that is how McEwan and Cruise do missions, don't they? Cruise says, I want to drive a motorbike off a mountain. How can we get that? How can we get a
yeah. How's
movie
that going
around
to
that?
work in the film?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And
I can
apparently,
see perhaps why
And
there's
Chan does it day
these.
to day as well. Like, apparently, like,
Okay.
during while he's directing, like he would literally sort of find things on the set and be like, right,
Mhm.
I'm going to I'm going to incorporate this step ladder or, you know, this other stuff. So I think he got more like that as it went on. But
Mm.
yeah, you can sort of tell in some
Mhm.
places.
Yeah.
I think most the thing is, I think most set pieces in this film are quite well integrated. They've sort of built this loose plot around trying to sort of bring down this drug dealer. Um, but they all kind of work. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's some silliness, but I think they generally work. I mean,
And there are moments where you can tell they've made a decision. So the corrupt cop, who
mm,
we find out much later on is corrupt, and he then gets shot. Doesn't need to frame Jackie,
Chan, yeah,
but
yeah.
actually in the first opening action scene, he leaves his post.
Yes,
And at that moment, it just seems like he's made a mistake, and it's. But of course, then when you reflect, he leaves on purpose
he's
in
the
order
one
for
that
the
was
guy to
yeah
get
let
away.
them past. Yeah,
So actually, there is conscious thought that makes
mm.
sense in a narrative storytelling. So yeah, some of it works, and some of it feels a bit slapdash and thrown together.
It is. It's a bit 50-50, isn't it? Like when you
Mm.
say, because there's also like character relationships in it that I like. Because he has his like his boss, his direct
Mm.
superior, and then the like chief inspector. And they return, as far as I remember, they return a couple of them. Like they work really well. Like I
Hmm.
like them, and there's that relationship. Um, those characters. So there's sort of fun bits and characters and some dynamics that work. And then, like I said, there's other moments where I'm a little bit head scratchy about. Um, yeah, it's just you just go. There's better ways of doing this. Like this feels a little bit on the fly, but it's fine because it sort of works out in the end.
Yeah.
Um, let's go back to the beginning though, because I want to go through some of the stuff at the beginning.
Mm.
So the film starts with them. There's this operation. This that they're going to basically sort of like what do they call it? Like a strike on this drug dealer is
Hmm.
going to be doing a transaction, and so they're going to sort of bust him in the middle of the thing, and so they've got this big operation. It's all in this like shanty town, like this odd like Hong Kong shanty town, um, on the side of a hill. And so always police are in there undercover, but one of the police gets spotted with a radio, and so they get sort of the cover is blown, and so they have to sort of basically just go in, and it escalates from there. Um, what are your thoughts on what do you think of this sort of opening scene, all the way up to the cars chasing through
Mm.
the thing?
I think it's almost like it's from a different movie.
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant. I think it's a little mini movie in itself, and you're absolutely right. Like it's the end of Bad Boys. It's also like Fast Five clearly has taken inspiration from this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit here listing all day, couldn't we, the amount of movies that have taken inspiration from Jackie Chan. But this almost feels kind of gritty and 70s
Mm.
in its depiction of kind of the police versus the, the drug lords and the crime syndicate. And you almost sort of feel like if this was a Hollywood Western movie, it'd be, like Gene Hackman French Connection or Clint Eastwood, in Magnum
Dirty
Force
Harry
or
sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that's how it's all played because there's a couple of really interesting moments where one of the characters, I think his name, no, I wrote it down because I wanted to remember. I think it was Tack. He's like freaking out when all the gunshots are going off and he can't cope
Mm.
with what's happening in the moment. He's, clearly going to be psychologically affected by this. It's interesting because it just recently I did To Live and Die in LA with Dan on Spider Dan and the Secret Boys, the
Mm.
Freakin' movie, and it has a infamous moment in that when one of the main cops freaks out in the back of a car during a car chase, and it's lauded because it's supposed to be, a realistic depiction actually of what happens
Under
sometimes. You
pressure.
can't
Yeah. Yeah.
help, and I think this does exactly the same thing. So yeah, I think it's a really well played scene because there is some genuine tension. There's, genuine y- like fear for the characters, not for Jackie, of course, because we know we've got to see him in the rest of the
Mhm.
movie. But for lots of people around it, it feels dangerous. And
Yes.
as you said, it then culminates in a car chase, literally through people's homes, through
Yeah.
these slum homes or shanty shops or what. Yeah, it is confusing what it's meant to be, but it works as a stunt. And
Mm.
when Jackie cuts back, I think it's really well directed as well. He has a couple of like aerial shots or a couple of like far back crane shots, and you see the whole thing, and the cars like coming through,
Yeah.
just demolishing everything in its path. It's real and it's tangible and
Oh,
it
tactile.
feels,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels dangerous and exciting. It's brilliant.
That's the one thing I'll say about these early all Jackie Chan films, but you feel it more so in this is you get bruised watching it,
Yeah.
and you feel this film. But I totally agree with what you're saying about the 70s film. Even the actual sort of like drugs transaction,
Mm,
the way it's lit, it's low light. They've got that sort of like, they're lit from a sort of a table. You've got a guy sort of like knife in the heroin, takes it out,
mm.
smudges it, a little bit of a smell and gives the nod. Like there's all this stuff, like you say, that could be French Connection, like a cop, like a 70s cop thriller.
Hmm.
And so you've got this sort of that's the start of the film. That's the tone that's being set. Um, and like it culminates in these big shootout. There are people running. They're like, they've even said like, they've got to save the people. So there's a whole
Mm.
bit where they're trying to get them to evacuate, and then they're running from building to building. There are people sort of the stunts in this opening bit again because it's the Jackie Chan stunt company. So they're all his sort of his people that he's worked with repeatedly. But people like coming off roofs, going through windows, like there's all kinds of stuff going on. And as you say, like the main drug dealer then makes an escape and he's plowing through, and Jackie jumps into his Toyota or whatever it is, the red Toyota thing, and then you say there's like up close, far away shots, all this stuff going on of watching this thing. They've got coverage on this thing
Yeah, yeah.
from as many places as possible. Like they're not wasting this one stunt. But it's also clear it's not. If you watch the end of watch
Mm.
the credits, and I highly recommend watching through at least the first part of the credits because you see all the sort of outtakes of the stunts. You see cars flipping. You see them like not quite making it through a building. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So it's the editing on this is really good as well. I think this
Mm.
opening section. But yeah, it's brutal. Like it's really brutal. Like this could be like it's a Martin Riggs could be stepping out of that
Mm.
car on the street at the end, and it's not. It's Jackie Chan, and you see, okay, this is cool. This is feels influenced by those like Jackie Chan's trying to step up to Stallone and Schwarzenegger kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Stallone's a really interesting touch point. And I know you want to do that as a later section, but I
Yeah,
think, yeah, Stallone is a real interesting comparison for this era for him with First Blood coming out and
Cobra.
with Cobra. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, they were both in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So you do get that, and then obviously it moves on to the bus chase, which we'll I want
Hmm.
to touch on because that's where even during that first bit, like it's kind of close quarters because it's all within the confines of the shanty town, and so you haven't really seen Jackie do an overly sort of amount. He's done bits and pieces, but nothing too much. And then straight away, having seen this kind of gritty opening, it jumps to he steals an umbrella from
Hmm.
a pedestrian, this woman, and then chases down a bus because they're trying to escape in a double-decker bus. And it kind of just the tone instantly shifts
Yeah, agreed.
to, oh, now we're in a Jackie Chan film.
Hmm.
It's got him being dragged along, and then he sort of climbs up and he climbs up into the windows and so on and so forth. I mean, it's seriously impressive.
Mm.
But what are your thoughts on that whole, that shift? How do you feel about that shift in tone?
I think you're absolutely right. And there's another scene later on, which I don't know if you have plans to touch on, but I'll just mention here. So if when we get there, we remember when he's trying to escape with Selena and the gang all comes in and how
Oh, in the
that fight,
car.
yeah, how that fight
Yeah.
starts. I'm just going to leave that there. And if we get there later, if we remember, I think, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right because it is like a switcher's throne because we want to see Jackie Chan do this stuff.
Yes.
And as you said, it is really dangerous. It is really scary. There is injuries, risk of life in all these stunts that they're doing. But it can't help but have that kind of silent era clownish feel because that's what we get from him. So
Yeah.
there's something about the way he runs actually, is as he's trying to catch up to the bus and his hair's going everywhere and you can't help but be a bit amused by it. And you're
Yeah.
right, that doesn't quite match what's going on everywhere else, which I guess you just accept because that's why you're watching a Jackie Chan movie. But it's another example of this film at times being a little bit at odds with itself.
Yeah. It's true, and I always wonder. I mean, I haven't read it, but I've got I Am Jackie Chan, the
Mm,
biography. I need to read it because I do feel like we'll keep coming back to this point, and again, we'll reference that scene you mentioned, the sort of in the car and stuff. Because you're right, at odds with itself is a really good way of putting it. Because we talk about this, and I think it's funny because I know we've had conversations, not just you and I, but I know others have said it as well. Like, with like Marvel movies, especially with sort of like Taika Waititi and stuff like, you'll undercut a dramatic moment with a
mm.
joke, and it sort of, it kind of sort of sometimes to the detriment of the story or to the detriment of the movie. I kind of feel that with this, where like the plot itself and stuff, this whole thing about, right, we're gonna take down the drug kingpin and all these other things. Like it could be straight down the line, like you similar story to even like say Lethal Weapon 1 or
Hmm.
something like that. Um, but like yeah, there's almost like it can't help
Mm.
but be Looney Tunes. It's
Hmm.
sort of like, right, we're going to make this really sort of straight edged, proper, hard hitting action film. But I'm also going to do a scene where I fight an unconscious guy, and you go, right, how does that work? Why is that in here? You go, okay. Um, so yeah, it's Jackie Chan's clearly a clown. I think that's the thing.
Hmm.
I know he got raised in like the Hong Kong or the Chinese sort of circus, wasn't it? The opera and all that kind of thing. So it's in
You
his
can't help.
blood. You can't
Yeah,
help
sure.
it. Yeah. But it's you have to sort of go in for the spectacle, don't you? Really, like this. That's the thing with these. And the bus is a really good example. Um, because it is authentic. One of the things I think that you have to remind yourself is this is 85. There is no CGI. There's there are no support cables or
Yeah.
green screen backgrounds that have been CGI'd out. Like the moment that double decker bus flies around the corner and Jackie Chan's hanging off an umbrella on the side and is up at like 45 degrees. Jackie Chan's hanging onto an umbrella at 45 degrees on the side of a bus.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think my attention, at least, and my sort of entertainment is held by that knowledge, and I'm
Mm.
watching it, and sort of it's the spectacle. So he climbs behind the bus, they have all the fight, so on and so forth. Um, and
It
so
ends
yeah,
in a brilliant way as well, doesn't it? With
oh
because
Christ,
he eventually, I mean, they try as hard as they can, and they eventually knock him off the side of the bus, don't they?
yeah,
And I love this in movies when characters are like, "Oh, I'll take this shortcut." In fact, it
yeah,
happens in Lethal Weapon as well, doesn't it?
yeah, it
When
does, yeah,
Riggs runs to the other side of the motorway as fast as a
yeah,
car can. So Jackie Chan runs as fast as a speeding bus and gets in front of it, doesn't he? And again, you see it in the credits, don't you? How in one of the takes, the bus gets too close and he has to jump out the way.
Yeah,
But even in the actual movie version, when he
it's
stops the bus and three of his stunt crew all fall out the windows, I mean, they were not walking away from that stunt, all those three guys either. They're absolute nutters, this lot.
they show it in like because you get to see it in slow motion again. They always make sure they've got loads of coverage of these things because now at least they do that. They're not like right, dust it off, guys. Another take, we'll do it again. Like they know that they've got one and done. But the way they hit that target, because it's not again not a stunt
Yeah.
road that is literally done on tarmac.
Yeah, yeah. There's no pads there. There's no like springy board or yeah.
Yeah, you're right. A couple of those were just sort of like, they're like, okay, get the stretcher,
Yeah.
get them out, get them patched up because it is brutal. Um, but it all works. Like it works really, really well. And so yeah, I'm really sort of I'm into this film from the beginning. Like I'm
Mhm.
really sort of like, oh
Agreed.
my God, this whole thing is,
This is about 15 minutes, isn't it? I think.
yeah,
Okay, from
that's the thing.
inception.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's a hard hitting first act that really gets it all going.
Mm.
Um, and then the whole thing's been a chase about this drug dealer. They've got the witness, and then Jackie sort of gets reprimanded for letting it get out of control, and so he has to babysit the new witness. And this is where the sort of the tone sort of shifts
Mm.
again into like true comedy. Like it's pure
Yeah.
comedy at this point. Like it goes
Kind
fully
of
into like fuck.
pantomime, even.
Yes, that's a good description. And I'm kind of confused by this bit, and I've watched it because I watched it a couple of times, and I want to ask the question. So he gets the witness, he gets to go to her home, and she's sort of like, huh, shuts the curtains on him, closes the door, like she doesn't want his protection or anything. And then she's attacked by a guy from inside her wardrobe wearing a mask, and he's got a knife, and it's a very sort of, I have to say, because obviously this is choreographed by Jackie Chan. Everybody else is like goes for it. Right? I
Mm.
just want to highlight we know um Bridget Lynn who plays
Mhm.
Selena, not just here but in other parts of the film. Like she goes for some of these stunts as well. Like so, her choreography with the guy at the knife and sort of shifting around and rolling the floor and other, it's really well done. Like it's really well timed. Looks good. Um, you before this fight, right? Before this whole situation, is it ever suggested or said that they're going to set this thing up?
No, I think we're just supposed to understand because we see his face, don't we? Because he pulls the mask up.
Yeah,
We're supposed to recognize him, right?
right. That was
Yeah,
all.
I
Yeah,
agree with you.
because yeah, I went back to because every time I'm like, have I missed a drop line? Have I sort of hit? Is there a scene missing? Like it just sort of happens, and you
Mm.
because you do it's, and then he keeps missing her and stuff, and it's obvious it's sort of like a setup, but it never feels like I thought like, am I? Is this supposed to be a big reveal? Like I don't know. It's sort of are we supposed to be the same as her? It's an odd setup.
Mm.
But this is all pure comedy.
Yeah.
Dancing around, doing all its bits and pieces. I'm less. It look, it's well done. I'm just less enamored by this kind of thing because it feels pantomime, as you say, clownish.
Mm.
And this is where I find like sometimes I don't quite gel with Jackie Chan's humor.
Mhm.
Um, I don't slapstick and stuff never really worked for me. It can in the right context, but like sparingly.
Yeah,
But I do find this goes on like way too long.
I agree. I mean, this scene goes on too long, but then the trouble is it's then backed up by further scenes doing similar style
Yeah,
comedy, isn't it? So I would say there's probably the next 45 minutes of this movie, which are not disposable scenes, but are scenes that never get back to the height of the opening again.
yeah,
And and that idea of sparing, I think you know we've spoken about Lethal Weapon already, but Shane Black is a guy who can write a really
mm,
serious scene followed by a silly bit of slapstick. You think of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or The
yes,
Nice Guys, where you've got characters who are kind of doofuses and they get involved in silly moments. The Ryan Gosling character, Nice Guys, and
mm,
Robert Downey Jr. in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So it can work, and it definitely does work in other Jackie Chan vehicles. But I agree here. There's just it leans too far, I think, into that. And
Yes.
as you said, the very next moment is him because he gets knocked out by Selena, doesn't he? And
Mm.
then Jackie's doing the again amazing choreography because the guy really looks limp and it really
Yeah,
looks like Jackie's
yeah.
controlling
Oh, I
him.
wouldn't be surprised if Jackie's like, right, the only way to get authenticity is I'm gonna knock you the fuck out. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But no, it looks, as you said, the choreography, I will never fault. It looks good. It's fine. But it's just that tone. Like, it
Mm,
feels, it's verging into silly.
yeah, agreed.
Um, where I'm like, yeah, okay. And like you said, it becomes excessive. Like, this whole scene goes on for a bit, and then,
And then they go back to his place, don't they? And that's when May's there.
yes.
And it's a kind of same scene again, but with cake. And that
Yeah,
goes on too long.
several people get hit with cake, and then there's a whole confusion about that. Um, but between those two things, though, is the car scene, as you say.
Mm,
And again, this is where the sort of the tonal shift comes in. So, or bad, or just maybe just badly thought out jokes.
yes.
Because they do escape, and he's like, "Oh my god, we've got to get away. You need to be protected at mine." That was the whole point of this. So she would sort of go into police custody or go into police protection. So they jump in this car. They're about to drive. They're driving away. They're arguing, bickering, and he hits a guy with a pushchair.
Yeah, that's the bit I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, and you sort of go, like it's. They jump out. It's like, "Oh my god, the baby!" And it's revealed to be a dummy, like a doll.
Mhm.
And then it breaks into another fight, which again, actually, there's some good stuff in that fight.
Yeah, amazing.
But yeah, it kind of feels like, why did he need the to hit a pushchair?
Mhm.
Like, you could have easily just hit a person, which would have been almost
Yeah.
less dramatic, or like less dramatic. But yeah, again, it's like an odd tonal choice where I'm just like, this was not needed.
No. And actually, you talking now, I've just flashed that they do it in Speed, don't they? And Sandra Bullock's driving the bus.
Oh yeah, she hits the
She hits, and
yeah
then it turns out it's tins. It's
cans.
like a
Yeah.
homeless woman collecting. But again, like it seems to play in that movie much better. There's just something.
Well, in that, it's
It's
because they
it,
can't stop. Like, she's like, I
yeah,
can't stop, and they're trying to get the woman to see, and it's the response. Because in that, like Sandra Bullock in Speed, Sandra Bullock's
such
response
distraught.
is
Yeah.
trauma. Yeah, she's like, oh my
Mm,
god, I killed a baby. Like, she's almost in tears, like unconsolable. Someone else has to grab the
mm,
steering wheel, and they confirm that it's just cans, from probably some poor homeless person. To be
mm.
fair, so but at least it's not played for like, I don't know, it's played more dramatic there and has consequence and weight for the
Yeah,
characters. This is sort of like, it's a transition. That's all it is.
yeah, yeah. And again, it's not really his fault. And but again, he's out the car and he's doing the Jackie Chan run, and again, the hair's going everywhere. So we're
Yeah.
straight back into kind of the clown stuff. When really it should be he should be getting out. It should be somber. He should be slowly, tentatively walking up to that, like, oh my, as you said, in trauma, like, oh my god.
Mm,
But yeah, it's played for a laugh, and then just in order to get to the next action scene.
yeah. And the car's used well,
Oh, it's brilliant.
it's rolling around, going through the car. It's one of it's the first, we've had the bus, but this is much more close quarters. It's one of the
Mm.
first times, we get to see them use a prop, as it
Mhm.
were. And that's where they really shine. This team really shine. They get to do this kind of thing. And so yeah, again, high marks for this fight. I do like this fight, but the thing is, I like the way it ends as well. Actually, this is one of the first times I'm like, oh, this makes kind of sense. Selena gets hold of a gun. She's not used to how to hold it, which again I like. This is because
Mhm.
again in Western um action films and that, it's often, maybe it's just because it's American, I don't know, but they often just grab the gun and they know exactly what to do with it straight away. She's like, I'm not like, she's clearly like holding it tentatively. She doesn't really know what to
Mm.
do with it. And when she pulls the trigger, like she loses her footing and falls over. But they all stop. Like, even all the sort of the attackers and Jackie are sort of going, right, put it down,
Yeah.
because none of us know where you're going to be firing. So this is so I actually kind of like that. That works. What are your thoughts on that sort of this thing? Because again, it's an odd setup, but
No, I agree with you. I think it's good. And you've mentioned Bridget Lynn already, and I think she's good in the role.
mm,
But I think because she's good because she's asked to do a difficult job.
yes,
Her character is so like inconsistent. Here, I think you're right. I think it makes sense that her hands are shaking and she doesn't know what to do with the gun. But I mean, I think she's introduced as like the main drug lords.
More. Yeah.
She's like, but she's pretty like. It sounds like in her introduction she might be pretty high up in within their like
Oh,
a
they're
criminal
worried she knows
organization.
something. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
worried she has like specific information. That's why she gets end up being
yeah.
tracked down. Yeah.
And then suddenly she's shrieking and she's scared. I don't know. I just think perhaps she would have been handling this situation a bit different. I think she commits and I think she's good at whatever she's asked to do. But I think there's an inconsistency in what they're
Mm.
requiring of her because it needs to fit whatever the tone of the scene is. So here she needs to be shrieking and scared and fearful. In the next scene, she needs to be kind of like sarcastic and conniving and cunning. And yeah, I think she's got a difficult job and she does it all pretty well. I think this action scene is awesome. I think the way they
Mm.
use more of the sugar glass here for all the windscreens and
Yeah.
the side windows is brilliant because people are falling through them and smashing through them. And I think you're right. He doesn't defeat everybody. They decide like bugger this, it's not worth it, and they all leg it because yeah, as you said, who knows who's going to get shot if she fires that
Yeah.
gun again. So it all makes sense. It just doesn't all always come together. We're back to
Mm.
kind of the same idea again, I think.
The thing that I thought of with this film, and it may be because I was watching wrestling TikToks a little bit as well, but this reminded me of sort of wrestling WWF storytelling.
Hmm.
Because the whole point of the storytelling is to get to the next match or the next event, you know. So
Hmm.
I love all the sort of wrestling storytelling. I love sort of, sometimes when they do it really, really well, they'll play an angle or whatever. But oftentimes you feel it's transitional, like it's
Hmm.
transactional. Okay, we've got to have this scene or this promo or this whatever we're going to do to set up to give weight to the next match, that sort of thing. And there's parts of this film that feel very much the
Hmm.
same, where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, we've got to be in this location for this purpose, and you want to give you want to give this some weight, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, and so it's sort of again almost like the plot and the story feels like it's serving, as we suppose, it's serving the action rather than being meshed together.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and that sort of, as you said, this is a great scene, but it's a weird transition to the start of it, and then kind of like, although they all run off, it kind of peters out. And you're like,
Hmm.
oh, cool, all right, it makes sense why it ended, but it's that thing of, well, we can't have Jackie beaten up by a bunch of guys, but you can't have him fully like roundly beating them all as well. So it makes sense. Like this is an escalation. So yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's well performed. And then we have a sort of a period of film where, like you say, with May, the cake. Then Selena finds out this. She sees the photograph of all the police
That's
officers and
right.
sees
Yeah.
the face of her attacker. And then so she plays it all sort of like sexy and coy and all this other stuff. Completely like, again, as you said, a different character to how she's been the rest of the evening. Jackie sort of falls for it and then she escapes. Um, I don't know, yeah, this is where it's sort of, then there's the whole court case where he has to
Hmm.
present it, but he has a tape and it's actually almost like Carry On level
Yeah, that's a great shout.
innuendo about like he plays it, but it's a recording of when she was sort of like playing him so she could escape and she sat on his cactus and it's almost like,
Yeah.
oh, matron, oh, like
Yeah.
it's I'd forgotten all about this. So like I was just like, this is very sort of Carry On. It's very
Mm.
sort of like 60s British humor, but clean. Like it's throughout it, like it's innuendo, but never smutty. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
I don't know. Does any of this work for you though? Like this whole, because it's about 20 minutes of all this
Yeah,
stuff going on.
it's too long. The court case goes on for way too long. And I think I watched the sub version. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting because sometimes when you watch sub stuff, you kind of I just think to myself like everyone seems of a level. Everyone seems good, or some people seem great, but nobody ever seems bad
Mm.
in sub stuff for some reason. But not here. The guy playing the main prosecutor lawyer
Oh God.
just seems bad. He just seems bad, and it goes on for too long. And I just want it over because then he comes back later and he's equally bad there as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to whoever this actor is, and I'm sure he's great in other stuff, but yeah, in this scene, I just kind of want it over with. And I hadn't put that together with Carry On, but that's such a good shout. It really does feel that way. And it just, you think where we started with that gritty 70s realistic like action,
Yeah.
this is just so far the other end that I just, and unfortunately it's bookended, isn't it, by the pantomime cake stuff, and then we get the police station phone call stuff. So yeah,
Mm.
it's just a segment of the film that I'm not a great big fan of, if I'm honest.
Yeah. It doesn't, like you say, it sort of, it serves a narrative purpose,
Hmm.
but like you say, it goes on too long. And the film's, let's say, the film's not overly long.
No.
It goes back, goes back, a pretty fair clip. But like, yeah, there's stuff like this where you're like, this doesn't need to be this long. Let's cut a couple of minutes here and there. Let's just crack on. Um, because it does feel like I'm beginning. I feel it, like you said. You sort of like you go, okay, it's still going. Like let's move
Hmm.
on. Like not even. It's not. I'm not even like saying I want. Oh, I don't. Not saying I need another action scene. I just sort of want something that's got a bit of weight to it that doesn't feel silly. And again, the phone scene's well done
Mm.
in the sense of it's that sort of like Buster Keaton kind of physical comedy, Charlie Chaplin. You know, I do feel like you feel in some of those scenes, when it's not the action based, because Jackie Chan will do these other sort of smaller sort of, let's say, gymnastic acrobatic kind of scenes.
Mm.
There is an homage, or at least there's an affection for that silent era kind of sort of clownishness, as you say,
Hmm.
Charlie Chaplin or Lauren Hardy or those kinds of things, and it works. I mean, rape joke aside,
Hmm.
which is awful. It's just
Yeah.
such a weird thing. But the thing had been all tied up in the phones, and he's got them on
Mm.
the wrong cradle, and then he puts them all back, and it sort of flips, and it's all like, oh, well done. That's you know kind of well done. But it's sort of it's almost a bit of a, and you just go, oh, you
Yeah,
nod.
because
Yeah,
I
all
think
right.
you said it just now, and I'm going to back you up, like because it's not adding anything to. It is fun, but
Yeah.
it's like a sketch from a sketch show. And
Mm,
like, great, you probably took a lot of time to choreograph that, and it's really well done, and it's clever. And
yeah.
one of those phone calls needed to be, we've seen the drug guy get down here now, or like there needed to be something to do with the plot for that scene to exist. So
Yes.
I think that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. The other one that this makes me think of is, and he's not part of a double act, but like Abbott and Costello
Hmm.
is another one where it's sort of like they'll have a scene of or Lauren had those double acts where like you'll have a feel like, I don't know if you've ever seen when Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman or Frankenstein. There's the horror mashups. They're the only Abbott and Costello films I'll have or I've seen. They'll have a scene where like the joke is they're at a train station, and between them, like one's putting the suitcases on something and the other one's taking them off on the other side.
Right.
Like there's that kind of confusion. So like they're not actually achieving anything,
Hmm.
but the joke is that kind of thing. And it's usually well choreographed and it's fun, but like often I feel the same with those, and like this isn't serving anything and it's
Mm.
going on too long. Like you're
Mm.
kind of pleased with this joke, but you need to bring it to a close, like, move on. Um Yes, this whole thing. But again, this is again, I'm gonna say another tonal shift because it does shift. You do get sort of, he gets some information. He gets called to a house. I think I've missed
By
anything.
Snake Eyes, isn't it? He's got
Yeah,
who he thinks is like a informant, isn't it?
that's it.
But actually, he's
Yes,
acting on behalf of the crime lord.
yes. So yeah, and so he goes to this house, and again, I'm getting those sort of like 70s vibes. Like he
Mm.
sneaks in, jumps over the gate, climbs up the side, sees she's in there tied up, and then there's a fight scene, and there's also this stuff. A guy goes through a window and off a balcony onto a lawn, and you watch it, and you're just like,
Stretcher.
dude, yeah, dude's not getting up from that. Like that's incredible. I always wonder, like, what's going through their head the moment he hits that balcony and he's still
Mm.
rolling. Like he must be going like, oh, this is gonna hurt. Like this is not, tuck my head in and hope for the best. Like that's all it can be. But that feels again goes back to sort of like I'm thinking as you said, like, I don't think I can see Gene Hackman sort of high kicking anyone, but
Yeah.
you get that sort of more 70s vibe again.
Mm.
And this is where you get the betrayal. This is where Jackie gets set up for having killed a police officer, because you get the guy you mentioned at the beginning, he's all sort of set up in this, and so they turn on him, and it again has this whole thing of sort of like, it feels gritty again. It feels like
Mm.
weighty, and I'm like, oh, hang on, this is a different. Oh, we're back to the film that we started with.
Yeah, that's true. Because they use Jackie's gun, don't they? They take his gun off him and use that to shoot this other police officer. And I mean, if you imagine, like, oh, you can't do a hard cut, obviously, from the opening, but if that had been maintained all the way through, that kind of consistent tone, this moment would have had so much weight, would have been so.
Mm,
It also could have come 20 minutes earlier, if I'm honest. But
yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. We've kind of circled back, and this could be like this is like a scene in The Departed,
Mm.
like something like that, where you really care for what's happening. But I think because so much of the other stuff has lent too far, we do care whether, well, we know Jack is going to get himself out of it because we always do. But I don't know, we should be totally bought in this moment, and we should really care that he's been betrayed by somebody in the force and that he's being set up. And you just kind of,
But
okay,
the reveal of the guy coming in who wants to retire and is looking for a retirement bonus,
mm,
him walking in, and like, you do, I know, like, it took me a couple of viewings to make the connection that it's the guy from the beginning,
hmm
because you're not thinking that. Because that moment at the beginning where he says, like, you let them go, it's like, no, I was covering your back. It's so sort of inconsequential
mm,
that you just go, oh, they've created a scene just that allows them to leave. That's it.
yeah,
It's extending the chase. That's the purpose of it. But it's never followed up. Like, if there was a bit of a subplot of Jackie confronting the guy and going, I got done for all this.
mm,
The bus chase, it all got out of hand. Your fault. It's on you because you weren't at your post as you were supposed to. You failed your bit of the mission. If that was sort of like there, to have him then walk in and be a sort of a snitch would be like, oh,
mm,
like, it becomes weighty, because it's almost played like that when he walks into the room. It's almost like they want to have a sort of a Dallas moment of like, ta-da! But it doesn't have that weight, does it? So it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. So but you get the tone, but like not the impact of it all. So I think you're 100% right that there's just,
yeah. There's just something not because he like Selena's there, isn't she? As you said, she's all tied up, and again,
yeah,
but because she was a bad guy, and then she was sort of a good guy, and then she ran away, and is she a bad guy again, or again? Like it's all just not quite coming together. Something's just not quite gelling
yeah,
with everything at this point.
yeah. I agree. It's sort of, it's there's two different films going on, as you say,
Mm,
on the same reel.
mm,
Because it does escalate into sort of because after this bit, like, Jackie Chan gets kind of serious. Like,
yeah.
he gets framed for the murder of this crooked cop. He then is going to get arrested, and he's going to get sort of like, at least he's going to be put in custody whilst it's investigated. Makes complete sense. I understand that his gun
Mm,
is used, and then he goes on the run, takes the chief inspector. Um, And even when the chief inspector's sort of like, look, I know it was, I know it wasn't you. I know you. Be safe, do what you're gonna do, kind of thing. Like, all that is, again, I'm thinking maybe more lighthearted, but I'm still thinking like Dirty Harry, or
mm.
any of those sort of cop 60s, 70s cop films.
Yeah, you got to go rogue to get the job done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
absolutely.
Um, and then but then it has this weird, like, this is the thing, not with this whole film. In fact, May to me represents that sort of dichotomy, because then he's sort of he's staking out where he thinks this guy's going to be at this shopping center, and he, like, Jackie Chan's looking all sort of like bruised and sweaty and grizzled, and
Mm.
he's sort of like, I'm going to bring him down. And then May stood there going, I'm hungry.
Mm.
Are we still here? And I'm going like, yeah, why is she there? Like, I don't understand this. Like, why is she in this scene? It feels so sort of incongruous with what they're trying to achieve.
Mm.
Um, it's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and I think yeah, it's interesting because I hadn't again. You talking about then it was I was flashing through the film in my mind because for the last sort of 20 minutes or so, probably longer than that, half an hour, he's only got one costume, hasn't he?
Yeah,
It's from the break into the house and the framing, and then they like chloroform him and knock him out, and then the arrest and the escape, and then the final scene is all just kind of one after the other, one after the other for the
yeah.
character.
It's all within like I don't know 24 hours, or at least within
Yeah,
12 hours. It all
he like hasn't
happens.
got changed or anything. Like he's all
No,
sweaty and beaten up and
yeah,
exhausted, and yeah, you're right. So I guess May's there because she's the only one he can rely on at this point, but I'm not sure what her function is. I guess she brought him some food because he was hungry and then chose to hang out. But yeah, she doesn't she needs to be given something to do, doesn't she?
yeah.
And
Cause
she's not.
no, because she says like I'm bored, and he goes then leave. Like, that's
Yeah.
it, and she sort of just does, and you go like,
Yeah.
all right,
I need you to a bit like, maybe Rear Window. I need you to go into the mall to
yeah,
do this because I
you
can't
need to
go
be my
myself.
eyes.
Because yeah, absolutely. They need to come up with something for her to do for her purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's one of these things where you'll hear of writers or directors, and you say, oh, they can't, you know, they can't do female characters. Like Michael Bay,
Mm.
or he's not great with female characters or whatever. And you go, yeah, at least he sort of, you know, he'll give them something to do.
Yeah.
Like Jackie Chan literally just put her on the scene and she's gone, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm just here at this point. And they give her a cake and she's like, oh, we're doing that again. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it feels bizarre. However, it does sort of, again, like, he is now in 70s cop mode as far as I'm concerned, because then it switches to he sees Selena going into the shopping center and
Mm.
the drug dealers, all sort of stuff. So he goes in, and again, at this point, plot out the window, doesn't matter because it becomes one of the most impressive spectacles of glass shattering fights across a shopping center that you are ever gonna see.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like the Blues Brothers, but with people,
yeah,
not cars.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, and a motorbike.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so good. Like the start of this movie and the end of this movie are like 5-star
yes,
perfect moments. Unfortunately, it's just an hour of whiffle in the middle. Yeah, this end is just unbelievably good. The choreography of the fights is so fast.
yes,
The level of stunts that Jackie and his team are doing is, we have to, you've said it and I'm going to back up, like we have to talk about how good they are and how committed they are as well, is unreal because fine at Sugar Glass, but it still hurts. They're
yeah.
still flinging
Oh,
themselves onto the corners of tables and into
yes.
trophy cabinets and
Down between escalators
yeah,
onto a
yeah, yeah.
table. Like some of the falls in this are insane. Like you say, through windows. And it's like I say through the glass. The whole first bit is I love because I like when they use props. He's got when they're fighting and he's using like the clothes rail and he's
Mm,
sort of like it's spinning around on its wheels and he's using the stuff in it. Like all of it is fantastic. It's incredibly well done.
yeah.
Um, but they don't want to sort of like they don't so it's almost like there's that gymnastic element to it, acrobatic element, which is all the choreography and the timing. But this one doesn't spare the brutality.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's like as you say, sort of they when they fall, it's not like behind something so they can land on a cushioned surface. Like you said, they bounce off the side of things, they roll through like one of them I think hits a bench,
Mm,
and you see these things. And then they get the guy on the motorbike and the guy gets I can't even like setting this scene up must have been like,
mm.
the talking through this. Jackie ends up on a motorbike, drives into a guy who do you want this made me think of weirdly think of have you ever seen No Holds Barred?
That's a
Hulk
wrestling.
Hogan, the
Yeah,
Hulk Hogan.
I don't know if I have.
All right. I'm going to recommend it as a sort of like
Mm,
a bad movie watch because it's awful but hilarious at the same time. There's a scene that where Hulk Hogan runs into someone with his motorbike and they do a similar thing where they sort of end up on the front of the bike and he sort of hurls them off.
hmm
And so I remember him being quite proud of that sort of stunt. And then you think like Jackie Chan did it through like 12 panes
Yeah.
of glass. Same thing, gets a guy on the front of the motorbike and then drives it through, a display with mannequins and glass and all this other stuff. And again, all the coverage is great. But like I say, it just goes on, and where I've been thinking, like they say, there's the schmaltz and stuff in the middle. I'm going, oh, it's going on, and I want it to end. I'm watching this and going like, this is still going, and it
Yeah.
is insane how much it's still going. And it ends in like Jackie Chan jumps off things, goes to the roof of one thing, and that's one thing he does, like a garden
Yeah, he gets
shed
knocked through,
display.
doesn't he? Because he has like a
Yeah.
big. There's like the. Apologies, I don't know what the main. You've got the criminal lord, haven't you? Then you've got he's got main henchmen underneath him.
Yes.
Their
Yeah. The
fight goes on, which is
underboss.
brilliant. Which is kind of like raid levels. I can see
Mm.
why Gareth Evans cites this as a movie that's definitely influenced the raid, and particularly the raid 2 with the big final fight in the kitchen. I think is inspired by this in Police Story. But yeah, they have like a going on fight, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think he's the guy that puts Jackie over the banister and through like some little, yeah, I don't know, like love seat or something.
Yeah.
And he gets up, doesn't he? Takes himself back up. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So, yeah, and all that sort of, and it culminates in so the drug dealer's escaping.
He's got
If
the
you
briefcase which has got the evidence in that Selena's
Yes,
printed off, isn't it?
that's right. And so to track him down, he's like, I don't know, 3 floors down, 3 or 4 floors down, and he sees he's escaping. So Jackie jumps from a balcony area of this floor he's on and slides down a lighting display.
Yeah, I think it's a metal pole, isn't it? With like kind of like fairy lights around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, to fall through a pane of glass into a thing and then rolls out to go get him. And they again, ultimate coverage, like you see him do this like 5 times.
I love it. I know some people don't get on with this concept that Jackie Chan came up with, but I'm with you. Like I put myself at serious risk here and I genuinely got really injured. I'm
Yeah.
going to show the shit out of this. I'm going to
Oh,
show it from this angle
100%.
and
Yeah.
that angle. I'm going to show it 3 or 4 times. Like, yeah, I'm with him. Definitely.
Oh, 100%. And even as a viewer, you see it from different angles and you're just like, yeah, no, that's insane. The one thing I do know about this scene is you say they were like fairy lights. I think it's actually bulbs. It's actually
Oh,
bulbs
okay.
that are plugged into it. Because they didn't do it. And at one point they wanted more. I think they wanted money, but like, you can't have more lights. But because he's going down it, like he's bursting the bulbs as he goes down, and he burnt the palms of his hands like quite badly doing this scene. So and he still gets up and finishes off
Won't be the last time Jackie puts his body on the
no,
line and gets bad injuries,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But one of the things you say about the tone of this, because it's spectacular. Like this whole end set piece in the shopping center is phenomenal. It's 100%. I think you're right. This film is bookended by 2 5-star set pieces. Absolutely. But talking about the tone again, we've had this sort of like funny, jovial, clownish Jackie Chan throughout the whole film. And then this sort of end piece like shifts, this whole sort of even in the house and the whole bit of like running away, having been on the run kind of thing is just more serious. But then it ends. The actual ending of this film is the police come in. They're like, Jackie, no. So like the inspector and stuff. Then we've got the evidence. We know it wasn't you, kind of thing. So he knows he's going to be freed. But it's almost like it feels like a Clint Eastwood ending. Like this is a Dirty Harry ending. They've said no, don't. Or it made me think of like Rocky 5 or even like Lethal Weapon. Again, that thing of like don't kill him.
Yeah.
But they're like don't hit him, and like an enraged Jackie like just pummels this guy in the stomach like a number of times. But he's like clenched and he is tense, and then it's like he's furious, and he does it, and then. The film ends with him going for him again.
Yeah, it's like freeze frame. The end.
Yeah,
hooray!
Yeah,
it's weird.
And again, I was like that feels so. I can see that of the character at the start of the film, but the one that was pissing around with, getting cake in the face, and has a cactus as his favorite, as his best friend and stuff. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't gel. It's so bizarrely off kilter, the whole thing.
I
I
think
don't
the
know.
scene, I think what highlights what you're saying perfectly is the scene when he just before he escapes with the chief inspector, and he has a big speech,
Mm,
and it's like, "Don't we have mothers too? Our mothers love us." And there's all these weird lines that he's saying, and but he's really going for like the veins are popping. He's angry, like he really means it, and I think it's a good performance by Jackie Chan in that
mm,
moment. But because it's Jackie Chan, and because we've seen him do that stuff earlier, you can't help but have that undercurrent of comedy. It's
yes.
not meant to be funny, this scene. It's meant to be serious. It's meant to be like, think about what the police do for you on a daily basis. That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Take it seriously. Police put their lives on the line, and different era, right? We
Mhm.
talk about the police slightly differently then than we do now.
Yeah.
But I can't help but watch that scene and think, oh, it's a bit funny. And it's not meant to be.
Mm,
And I think if they'd done away with all that comedy in the middle, which I know isn't going to happen because it's a Jackie Chan vehicle, then that scene would have been powerful. It would have been impactful. So I think it's the same here. Like he's back to going for it. It's veins popping, it's muscles rippling, it's angry, but I just don't quite buy it.
no, it's this one of the things that this film, one of the reasons this film was made, um, by Jackie. I don't know if you know this. So they kept trying to push him onto the American market,
Mm,
and he finally sort of made it a splash with like Rumble in the Bronx,
mm,
which obviously then led on to Rush Hour and so on and so forth, and then a whole slew of relatively family friendly sort of you know chop socky sort of like fun films, which are great for the most part. I think some really good ones. Um, but they really wanted to push him as a major action star. And
mm.
we've talked about Stallone and Schwarzenegger and that sort of thing. And he made a film called The Protector. I don't recommend it. It's awful. Uh, it's quite hard to get hold of, actually. I think I've not seen all of it. I've seen bits of it online and stuff, but even that. But they want him to be like this grizzled action star. So they brought him
Mhm,
over to the States to make this film. And he really didn't like the experience. He hated the experience. He felt like he'd been taken advantage of
mhm,
and this sort of thing. So, and he felt kind of sullied by it. So he went home and said, "Well, I'm going to do really what is considered his first, modern era action film, because a lot of his other stuff is period, isn't it? All of his
mhm,
sort of
mhm.
kung fu films and Project A and all this other stuff. And yeah, this is what he came up with, and you can sort of see that it never wants to fully lean into being a hard bitten, gritty action film. But the influences are still there, but he keeps pulling back to be going like,
Yeah.
no, I'm still that Jackie Chan. And I think that's the sort of the at odds that
Mm,
we're seeing
mm. That's
is
interesting. I didn't know that, and that makes perfect sense.
mm. So yeah, it's an odd film, and it's good. But what are your final thoughts to round out then sort of police story? This is the first entry into the series, and we'll sort of see
Mm.
different versions. But
I mean, I really like it. It's really rewatchable, and I think but that's because you're going to get that awesome scene at the end. So you watch the start and you're like, oh, okay, I've got to watch this next bit, and I've got to watch this next
yeah,
bit. But I'll get a scene now. I get the scene with the cars, oh, and I've got better. So it is rewatchable, and I like it. And I said, I've watched one with my son, and if he turned up to him and was like, I really want to watch Police Story, Dad, I've watched the trailer. And before I said I'd be reluctant to choose to show it to him, but I would if he really asked to watch it. We could
mm,
watch it. And I wouldn't. I'd be quite happy to watch it again, and that would be the second time in a week. That's not a problem. But in amongst those films that I said at the start that I've watched, it's middling for me.
yeah,
I think Project A is a much better film. I think Armor of God actually is my favorite I've watched so far of this kind
mm,
of era. I think that manages to mesh
the two,
the two much better. Kind
yeah,
of in that it's like a Indiana
it
Jones
is,
style,
yeah,
and so you get the adventuring and you get the stunts and you get the action, you get the comedy, and that seems to that feels like a good fit, right? Raiders is essentially
mm,
that anyway, isn't it? It's action and comedy and stunts, and so yeah, I like Police Story, and I think it's bookended by pretty infallible action scenes, but it's not his strongest of this era, which is interesting because it's often the one people go to and hold up.
yes, everyone cites it. So I very much feel like people got, I was look at the reviews and I'm always intrigued. People do like, this is the Jackie Chan masterpiece. Da, da, da.
Mm.
I'm with you. I disagree. I think they don't. I don't think this is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I think there are flashes of
Hmm.
what could be really great and what could be really interesting, but it's sort of bogged down in a need to be sort of the clownishness, and because there are odds that it doesn't work. I agree with you. Armor of God definitely sort of has that balance better, and in fact, I think in that film he manages to incorporate sort of like you say the prop
Mm.
clownishness as well in some of the fight scenes much better. Um, and so it sort of the transition sort of makes sense, and because it's a quest film as well, it sort of it feels like it's moving forwards all the time as well. So I think you have that
Yeah.
on its side. But no, I agree. And again, I think even Project A sort of again he is because it's a period piece, because you've got some great sets and you've got pirates and stuff in that, like it all kind of sort of like works
Mm.
much better. But I do feel there's a reason that there's only like this Project A and Project A Part Two, but there's like a whole bunch of police story films. Because this was a success. This was a huge success in Hong
Mm.
Kong and Asia, and actually did pretty good business in Europe, but did struggle in America. And this is where I wanted to sort of like we'll round out.
Mm.
Why do you think then what are your thoughts on the difference then between, especially this era of this is 85.
Mm.
This is peak. I mean, this is the year of Commando. This is the year of around sort of like Rambo First Blood Part Two.
Mm.
You know, by now you've also had like Beverly Hills Cop. So comedies are part of the sort of the action genre
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
beginning. You've had 48 Hours. So, I don't know what that difference then between the Western and the sort of like the Asian sort of cinema in this sense of action films. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because like I thought, I'll have a quick look because I wanted to be clear on exactly what was out around that time. And yeah, you're right, the ones you cited, and we spoke about Stallone and Cobra, didn't we, as well?
Mm.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I can see, like, looking at the list of things that came out in this era, Cannon was pretty big around this time as well,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah,
So, ninjas were a
yeah,
big thing
yeah.
in the Cannon films. So that I know it's different, and I know it's from a different country. But that kind of Eastern influence was permeating Hollywood filmmaking and American culture and action movies. We'd had Ninja 3, The Dominion, and American Ninja, and all that kind of.
Mm.
But I think the other things that are popular, I guess, were Arnie and Stallone with a pumped up, and then outside of that, you had people like Chuck Norris. I guess was pretty. This is peak, isn't it? Mid 80s Chuck
Wait,
Norris as well.
Chuck Norris is a really weird one because
Like Missing in Action, is that around
yeah,
now?
yeah,
And
that's 85. The first Missing in Action is this point. Yeah, that's sort of his like he'd made some films before this, and they'd done
of
all
course, yeah.
right, but they were all very sort of niche to be
Hmm.
very they're very Chuck Norris films. Missing Action, which was canon, is really that sort of what kicks off his you know real testosterone boost in action films.
Mm.
Yeah, it's there are that that zeitgeist is there, that there's a need
Mm.
for action. And but there's something different, I think, like because they'd already made The Protector, so they'd already tried to make Jackie
Mm.
Chan a thing in the States, in 84. What I see though is people have watched this film and they've seen Jackie Chan stuff, and Cobra is probably the best example because I mean
Mm.
Stallone's clearly a Jackie Chan fan, like there's no doubt about it. But like you watch Cobra, which started out as a pitch for a version of Beverly Hills Cop,
Mm.
which was like, no, that's not how this works. And then it was taken away. And the more I watch this film, the more I'm like, it's the same film.
Mm.
Cobra is very similar in many respects. Of we have a witness that's being chased down. I mean, it's a death cult in
Mhm.
Cobra because it has to be more. Um, but again, Cobra is the gritty. He's aiming for that Dirty Harry kind of sort of like he wanted to be the 80s Dirty Harry. That's really what he was going for with that film. But I can see there's so much of Police Story sort of in that
Mm.
idea. um I don't know. It has influenced so much stuff. But
Yeah. I guess in Hollywood you had kind of two, like you know what the films you've mentioned, and putting aside the canon stuff, which is kind of its own subgenre, isn't
mm,
it? But we had Arnie and Stallone, we had Commando, and we had First Blood Part Two,
yeah.
and then we have Eddie Murphy, we have Beverly Hills Cop, and we have. But I guess those themselves are two kind of
Mm,
subgenres, aren't they? Because you're not going to get Eddie Murphy in Commando,
no.
and you're not going to get Arnie or Stallone in Beverly Hills Cop. So I guess Jackie Chan fits somewhere uncomfortably in the middle of those two things, and American audiences clearly didn't want that. They wanted
I don't think
Eddie
they
Murphy
understood it.
wisecracking, or they
Yeah.
wanted muscle-bound, non-stop action. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It feels like he should have been massive.
He should have. I think that the thing is that combination of action and comedy in that purest form,
Mm,
true action comedy doesn't come along until the late 80s in the state,
mm,
in America, because it's, as you said about Shane Black, like Shane Black sort of like sort of slips it in with Lethal Weapon. You see it in that, but really sort of like the first you have, I would say Beverly Hills is action comedy in its, but
mhm.
it's a comedy action film.
Yeah,
It's an action comedy, and it's a comedy film with action bits in it. Like,
yeah, agreed.
um, but the first one where it sort of really goes for, I think of the late 80s Arnie's is um, Red Heat,
Hmm.
John with John Belushi, or
Yeah, what's
With
that?
James Belushi,
86, 87?
88.
Okay.
It's a lot later. So it comes at the 80s because he did that because he knew because Arnie starts to move into comedy with twins,
Yeah, yeah.
and then so like the sort of the relaxing of the action girdle,
Mm.
if you will, allows for that kind of thing. I just don't think the audiences weren't ready for it. In the 80s, they wanted like hard hitting, big blowing up kind of like proper action. The fact of
Yeah.
the matter is, you go back and you watch some of those sort of films. I'm you and I are massive fans of these kind of things. But if you watch anything other than the first Rambo film, right? Go watch Rambo part two, part three, like those 80s ones. They almost are action comedies. Like they
Sure.
are that
Or Commando,
ridiculous.
right? Yeah.
Commando, yeah, clearly
You
is. I
have
mean,
to laugh with it, even
yeah,
if it didn't intend it. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm never entirely sure if it did or it didn't, but I love it for it.
Of course, yeah.
Um, Yeah, but the 90s were sort of a much more open to that sort of
Hmm.
action comedy. Like Tango and Cash is 89, I think. So you start to see them coming through.
Mm.
And so I think Jackie Chan was maybe just ahead of his time, but he couldn't get the balance. I think but you're right, Armor of God, there was more acceptance for comedy in adventure films
Hmm.
in the 80s, kids' adventure films and stuff.
Mm.
Goonies,
Yeah.
everything from stemmed from that. Jackie just put the wrong one into the American audience.
Mm.
I think you're right. I think Armor of God would have probably paid much better as a gambit in the West than
Yeah.
Police Story or any of the others. Project A just does not play. I don't think Project A.
No.
I think it's great, but does not play in. It's about the Hong Kong Navy, isn't it? The
Yeah.
Chinese
Yeah. Yeah.
Navy. And it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. Like you're like, yeah, I don't know what is going on with this plot. I don't really understand the
Yeah.
context of
It's
this thing.
it's kind of Full Metal Jacket for about 20 minutes, but a comedic Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's an odd film, but a brilliant film.
it is good. Yeah. So yeah, it's an awesome one. Like when
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously, I guess, you know, Reaganite politics, which action movies tapped into,
mm,
doesn't allow for comedy.
no.
Whereas, we're getting into the 90s and we're changing over our political persuasion and we're going democratic in the States, and perhaps that's where it starts to seep in some more. I mean, I don't know enough about this and I'd have to research it, but that all seems to tally together to me. That's really interesting.
Oh, I think you're right, 100%. I think you are spot on. I think um, Reagan and especially sort of like the new Christian right
Hmm.
was held great sway over Western popular culture, both in America and this country. And it was all about that. It was about the good guys and bad guys.
Mm.
There was still the Cold War. That's
Hmm.
why, despite the Cold War coming to an end, Rocky proves proves that we can all change in '85, and then Arnold takes on, becomes a Russian to sort of bridge the gap in Red Heat and so on and so forth. You need that sort of like quite clear cut good guys and bad guys. Like you could have people like Martin Riggs be a loose cannon, but he's never an anti-hero. He's never. It's quite clear that he's a cop, and they're against drug dealers that are killing
Yeah.
kids. So
He's on the edge, but he's dedicated to his job.
exactly, like
Yeah.
John McClane sort of got good guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It has to be quite clear cut. They wanted that, and I think you're right. With the '90s, with Clinton coming in, there's a definite sway, and you get, True Lies, family orientated sort of spy action films. And you say you get people like Keanu Reeves doing Point Break and Speed, and it's a bit more open to these things. And I think that's where Jackie Chan is able to sort of weave his way in. And Rumble in the Bronx is perfect for that. Like Rumble in the Bronx is one of those films that sort of squeezed in that gap. Have you seen it?
I have, not for a long time. That's got the hovercraft in the
Yeah,
at the end, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think that he came in he tried to get in a decade early. And you're right. I mean, you're again pointing out all those canon films. Some of those are so unintentionally brilliantly funny, but they are as sort of like, they're trying to be as straight as and as butt clenchingly sort of serious as possible, but they're not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting period for Jackie Chan. But let's say this isn't the end. There will be more. Any final thoughts on either Police Story, but also like any of the influences you see from this film? You've watched this and gone, oh, that's I've seen that since.
And not, I think, other than the ones we mentioned. No, I mean, I think, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can always spot, where people have perhaps picked up on stuff. But knowing, I got this film picked deliberately, as I said from the start, because of these two directors and knowing how influenced they are. I think it's undeniable, isn't it, how influenced all action movies have become from certain individuals. Arnie Stallone had that influence for a long time, but I think anytime you can combine that kind of I guess we call now like that kind of parkour physicality is kind of born in this era of Jackie Chan, isn't it? Of like wanting to see people do this physicality. And I spoke about Cruise as well. His whole shtick now is, I want to do stuff for real.
Yeah.
Well, great, and please keep doing it as long as you can, because I love the stuff he's doing. I know he's not an unproblematic figure himself, but the movies he's making at the moment are some of the best films he's ever done in his whole career. So, looking at Maverick and the recent Mission Impossibles, like, keep going, please. But Jackie Chan was doing it 40 years ago as well.
Yeah. I think the thing you said there about that one thing is this sort of the tactile nature, the reality of it, like the fact, like, you and I both agree, like, yeah, you show me that massive stunt 6 times, you've earned it. Like, you deserve it. But also the fact that, like, it holds long shots. That there's like, it's not edited to within an inch of its life. Where it's like one punch, stop, punch here, kick here. Like, this is holding a shot of him climbing up the wall of doing something. Like, you are seeing Jackie Chan do this stunt, and yes, you are seeing the take where it worked, but you kind of know there was probably 6 where it went a bit pear-shaped or didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact it holds that. Again, the bus, him hanging on to the back of that bus with an umbrella and being dragged along the road, and there's a scene that's clearly like between 30 and 40 seconds long. And it's just a set thing of him running, and then eventually sort of ends up pulling himself up, and you're just like, yeah, no, he did that.
Yeah.
He wasn't a harness or anything. He was holding onto an umbrella, or at least something that looks like an umbrella, and he pulled himself up. And that's the kind of thing where I'm like, yeah, that's so impressive. That's his shtick, but like, it's it works.
So I guess the real, sorry, are you saying that again? That makes me think the real legacy then is, despite all those, Edgar Wright and the Gareth Evanses, who are directors who appreciate where this has come from. I guess the real legacy perhaps is where we now have Chad Stahelski, David Leitch, these
Yeah.
guys who were stunt performers, just like Jackie Chan was a actor and a stunt performer who became a director. So they know how to hold a shot. They know to show us Keanu Reeves really doing that.
Mm.
Show us Keanu Reeves really falling down those stairs in John Wick 2. All that
Oh,
kind of, so perhaps that's the real legacy, isn't it? Where we've come out of that horrible cycle of, as you said, punch cut, because these actors don't actually really know how to do it, and the directors don't really know how to show it. So that's the
yeah.
only way they can get around it. That's the legacy, isn't it?
100%. I think you are spot on with that. I think that the John Wick films,
Mm,
2, 3, and 4 in particular, have huge
mm,
production influences from these early Jackie Chan films. No
yeah.
doubt. Yeah, 100%. Now, for insurance purposes, I'm sure there's a bit more
Mhm, mhm,
safety and harnesses and some other stuff, but yeah. But I also think of modern action stars. You and I are both fans of sort of Scott Adkins, and
mm.
he's also in John Wick 4. But some of those sort of films, you watch um, Accident Man films.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Some of the fight scenes and stuff in when Scott Adkins goes and does his sort of slightly more comedic things,
Hmm.
or even the Debt Collector films
Hmm.
have similar things. Like he's clearly influenced by Jackie Chan in some of
Definitely.
his things.
Yeah.
Um,
I just watched One More Shot the other night, actually.
mm,
So the sequel to One Shot. Now, obviously, conceptually, there's supposed to be one continuous take. So obviously, the camera is held because it has to be. But James Nunn is another director, actually, who I think he knows how to frame an action scene. He knows
yeah,
how to make sure your star is even more so, because what I really like in these movies is sometimes you go away from Scott Adkins for 10 minutes because you have to, because this
yeah,
part of the plot is important here. But Scott Adkins is still doing his stuff over there, and it's almost like you come back and he's been fighting for 10 minutes. It's great.
yeah.
And he's sort of pummeling, he's still going. So yeah, Adkins is a great shout, definitely. And of course, my guy, the Staith, as well, is another one who,
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
when he gets the right director and they know how to use his physicality properly and capture it on screen properly.
Yeah. Again, when some people aren't taking it too serious, and again, I think like
Mm.
even like the Transporter film, especially
Hmm.
Transporter 2, to me, which is the pinnacle of that franchise, um, is the same. Like, he can do the physicality, but there's always that sort of like slight wink to the audience of like,
Yeah,
we know this is silly. Don't worry.
yeah.
Like, yes, he's covered in oil and he's using bicycle pedals, but do you know what? It's awesome. And you go, yeah, it
Yeah.
is, and I'm all in. Brilliant. Yes, it's funny. It's funny that I think, yeah. Well, when we get to the end of this, we've done,
Mm.
and because we'll shout out that we're gonna have some other stars come in later films. I think we'll look back on this and go, yeah, now this is a turning point for Hollywood,
Mm.
because I think this is where we start seeing like, oh, the big guys laying haymakers are starting to fade out, and we start to see like, even Bruce is never going to do this stuff. But you look at younger guys coming up in the 90s and stuff, and you're like, oh, they've got to have some martial arts and stuff. And obviously, you know,
Yeah.
culminates in the Matrix and stuff. But yeah, we're also going to be talking about Michelle Yeoh soon enough,
Mm.
who is phenomenal in many, many things. And we're also, because we will do the side, this series had a spin-off series, so we'll be talking about Cynthia Rothrock as well. So it's all going to be all kinds of 80s action stars. But yes, but anyway, Jack, that's been a fantastic conversation, and thank you
Yeah, had a
very
great time.
much for starting this police story journey. We've got this retrospective. I like doing the film, like you said, trying to force. We'll do, doing a film at a time. We'll get them
Mm.
out over time. We'll be back, and eventually you'll have a whole collection, a box set of thoughts on the whole police story. But anything
We
final?
don't want people to binge us. We want them to, look forward to the next episode.
That's it. Yeah, like a fine wine. Just come back and
Yeah, absolutely.
we age well. Not so well actually. Things hurt, but
Yeah.
better than others. But of course, Jack, for what you're doing, you've talked about, obviously all your musings, but also back to the filmography. How's it going? Where can they find you? And what's coming up?
What's coming up? Yeah, so actually, it's a double bill for me today. I was recording earlier because I was recording my latest Back to Filmography episode. So that was on Homefront, and that will be
Mm,
out well, I'm going to say next Monday at time of recording, but it won't be because it'll already be out probably by the time this comes out. So, yeah, Homefront is coming out on the 22nd of January. And then we're getting into the next kickoff era. I think we're kind of coming out of what I've been calling the safe space. So we're going to get, we've got the Expendables 3, but then we're going to get Spy, and then he enters the Fast and the Furious world. So we're getting that next kind of third act, I think, for the
The
States.
career
So,
steps up a gear, sort of thing.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Spy's good. I think. Oh, well, I thought Homefront's kind of good as well, actually. But it's I'm not going to spoil it because I think you made a fantastic comment about if it was made 10 years ago, this could have been somebody else. If it was made now, it would be
Oh,
this other
that's right.
person. And I was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's it's like a spec script for any action star. And I was like, brilliant, exactly
It
right.
really is. Yeah, yeah. They just keep making this film every 10 years, whoever is the current like action protege key figure. Yeah, definitely.
I'd almost pay for that. I'd almost want to see that they get like a plot and they're just like, yeah, every decade we're going to get one. 2000, like 95, 2005, 2015, 2025, just different people playing that same part. That'd be amazing. I'd kind of sort of want to see that as an anthology. Anyway, yes, people go find this out. Back to Filmography has been fantastic. We talked about War and which was
Safe,
which was good. I enjoyed Safe. Good film. And I will be coming up in the future again. I've got Wrath of Man coming up, so some point. So
yes,
looking forward to that. So do go check it out. And obviously, Jack,
Thank
you're
you,
all over other Comics in Motion podcasts. You've popped up on those all over the place. So go find out what's going on there. But yeah, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find us, we're at 20th Century Geek all over the usual social medias. Check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/20cg media. Whole bunch of stuff on there. Trek into the Twilight Zone, 30-minute thoughts, bonus features and stuff, probably for this soon, and also for Stories Out of Time. The sister podcast with me and Julian Darius, where we talk about science fiction films. We're currently going through Black Mirror, and spoiler alert, kind of. The longer it goes on, the more annoyed I get with it. So that gets interesting beyond season 4. But for now, yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jack. And ladies and gentlemen, we shall see you on the next episode.